studying your last two. I swim med when they turned in. The staring down to mute. And can learn the pole that sunk he died.
Welcome to Salary and Dividend Planning for Owner-Managers. Many beginners think the first step is comparing tax rates, CPP costs, RRSP benefits, or running salary versus dividend calculations. But experienced tax advisors know that the real starting point is not the tax system, it's the client. Before deciding whether an owner-manager should receive a salary, dividends, or a combination of both, we need to understand the person behind the corporation. On the left side of this slide, you can see the traditional beginner approach. The focus is immediately placed on tax returns, calculations, percentages, and tax savings. While these items are important, they come too early in the planning process. On the right side, you can see how professional advisors think. They begin by understanding the client's family situation, retirement goals, future mortgage needs, and overall reliability and discipline. These factors often have a greater impact on compensation planning than a small difference in tax rates. At the center of the slide is the key question: salary or dividend? Notice that this decision sits below important considerations such as CPP, RRSPs, taxes, cash flow, and corporate planning. These are all tools that help us build the right compensation strategy, but only after we understand the client. The process shown at the bottom summarizes the entire planning philosophy. We start with the client. Then we understand their lifestyle needs, evaluate their level of discipline, identify their goals, and finally design the most appropriate compensation strategy. Only at the end do we decide whether salary, dividends, or a hybrid approach is the best fit. The most important takeaway from this slide is simple. A compensation plan succeeds only if the client can realistically follow it. Even the most tax-efficient strategy will fail if it does not match the client's behavior, needs, and long-term objectives. As tax professionals, our job is not simply to calculate taxes. Our job is to understand people first, and then build a compensation strategy that works in the real world. Now that we understand why compensation planning starts with the client, the next question is even more important. Can the client actually follow the plan? Many people assume that salary versus dividend planning is simply a tax calculation. In reality, it is also a behavioral decision. The most tax-efficient strategy in the world is worthless if the client cannot maintain it. On the left side of the slide, we see a disciplined client. This type of client pays on time, responds to emails, keeps proper records, and follows deadlines. Because they are organized and reliable, they have more planning options available. They can successfully operate using salary, dividends, or a hybrid compensation strategy. Their discipline gives us flexibility. On the right side, we see a scattered client. This client misses deadlines, forgets payments, ignores important communications, and struggles with organization. For these clients, complexity creates risk. A compensation strategy that requires constant monitoring, payroll compliance, and monthly remittances may become difficult to maintain. Notice the balance scale in the center of the slide. Tax savings are important, but client behavior carries even more weight. As tax professionals, we must always remember that a strategy must be practical before it can be optimal. This is why experienced advisors often prefer simpler compensation structures for less organized clients. A slightly less tax-efficient plan that is consistently followed is usually better than a perfect plan that eventually fails. The key lesson from this slide is simple. Feasibility comes before optimization. Before recommending salary, dividends, or a hybrid approach, ask yourself whether the client can realistically manage the responsibilities that come with the plan. Great tax planning is not just about finding the lowest tax result. It is about designing a system that works in the real world, year after year, for the specific client sitting in front of you. At this point, we have reached the most important lesson of the introduction. The goal is not to create the most complex compensation plan. The goal is to create a system that actually works. Many new tax professionals become focused on finding the perfect tax strategy. They compare salary, dividends, CPP savings, and tax rates, searching for the lowest possible tax result. But experienced advisors understand that simplicity and consistency often create better outcomes than complexity. The staircase in the center of the slide shows the process. Everything begins with understanding the client. Before discussing compensation, we need to know the person behind the corporation, their goals, their habits, and their financial situation. Once we understand the client, the next step is assessing discipline. Can they follow deadlines? Can they manage ongoing obligations? Can they consistently maintain the strategy we recommend? Only after those questions are answered do we choose a compensation method. Depending on the client's circumstances, that method may be salary, dividends, or a hybrid combination of both. The next step is implementation. A plan only creates value when it is followed consistently. This is why ongoing compliance, communication, and review are so important. When these steps are followed year after year, the result is long-term success. The client gains financial stability, confidence, and a compensation strategy that supports their personal and business goals. On the left side of the slide, we see the salary path. Salary provides structure and supports goals such as CPP participation, payroll records, and consistent income reporting. However, it also requires more administration, payroll calculations, remittances, and ongoing discipline. On the right side, we see the dividend path. Dividends generally involve less administration, fewer deadlines, and greater flexibility. For some clients, this simplicity can be a significant advantage. The key message is not that salary is better than dividends, or that dividends are better than salary. The real lesson is that the best plan is the one that the client can successfully maintain over time. As trusted tax advisors, we do not begin with calculations. We begin by understanding the person behind the corporation. Once we understand the client, choosing the right compensation strategy becomes much clearer, and the chances of long-term success increase dramatically.